Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Ray Esports Racing League here on Apex Racing TV. My name is Ron Mullins. Joining me in the commentary booth is Charles Bichelle, and in the virtual production hall, we have our old buddy Josh Wilkie. Tonight, we bring a close to the 2024 Spring Tour from the Ray Esports Racing League at Watkins Glen, and what a fantastic track to bring this season to a close at. This track is iconic in the racing world, fun to drive around, and also put some great racing on in both real life and the sim as well. Now, Charles, many moons ago, earlier on in this season, probably at the opening broadcast of this season at VIR, you mentioned how this was one of the races that you're looking forward to the most from this season. And I can't really blame you, but just trying to harken your mind back to that broadcast many moons ago, would you like to elaborate on what makes Watkins Glen with this series such a tantalizing prospect?
I tell you, Ron, at my age, I could have told you that on Sunday and I might not remember it. However, no, I think Watkins is probably, it's a driver's track, right? I think most of the people in iRacing that run this service week in and week out that just love Watkins Glen. It's a track that, you know, it's in basically every league, every car class. It's on the calendar, you know, every season. You'll get 2 or 3 races here, or 2 or 3 weeks where it'll be in either IMSA or one of the Formula cars or SCCA. So it's just one of those. It's as you said, iconic track, and it just seems to be a driver's favorite. And it's a fun track to drive. It's really challenging. It doesn't seem like it, but there's some really difficult corners to navigate, especially when you're actually in race mode and you're not just out running hot laps. And I think that's the biggest part of it.
We've got 11 of those challenging corners. This is one of them, the inner loop. You see Rich Green in the number 12 car clobbering those curbs. We got a fantastic view of this gyrosphere camera staying level on the plane, but you can see all the undulations around this fantastic, wonderful track. It's a bit of a sore subject for me just because I live only about, well, I say only, it's 6 hours away from where I live, but I still, at some point before I turn 25, I want to visit this track. I want to go for the 6 hours of Glen because I think that would be an absolute hoot. This race is going to be a hoot as well, to invoke a little bit of 20th century diction here. We also have a lot more Spec Miata drivers than we've seen throughout the past few races of these cars with this season. I believe we had about 16 or 17. I'm trying to remember exactly what the number was. We still have a lot of Spec Miatas, a bit more than we saw last time at Mid-Ohio. but we still have a lot to be decided with the final 2 races from this season. We're following Miles Grab, and this may be a good time to bring this up. He's at the top of the timing boards right now in this qualifying session, about halfway through, and he's also at the top of the championship point standings as well. We'll bring those up for you, and it's a fairly foregone conclusion that Miles Grab is going to be the one taking the championship in the Spec Miata category. 112 points on the board over Tom Laurie in P2. That's about 26 points, I believe. Pretty substantial gap coming to the last race of the season before the runoffs in 1 week's time. But you can actually look a little bit farther in the back. Josh Justice and Wayne Buttermore, they are tied on points coming into this round. That is going to be pretty tense for that final top 5 points paying position. And Josh Justice, funnily enough, he may not be the champion here in the Spec Miatas, but he's ending up being the champion in the Formula Vs. We saw the 2 Formula Car champions crowned last time at Mid-Ohio. But Charles, this is an absolute completely different kettle of fish, and with these Spec Miatas, we've seen a whole lot of stuff that we've deemed interesting from these cars, the shifting being a big factor in these races as well. So coming into this last Spec Miata race of the season, would you like to once again talk the viewers through the challenges in terms of driving this car around this track? Yeah,
absolutely. So this is an older, they call it the Spec Miata. It's an older version of the MX-5. It's an older, I guess, scan, if you want to call it that. So it's from, I think, 2010. So it's not the newest and latest and greatest Mazda that you see out on the track that you would normally see at like Daytona or something like that with the MX-5 Cup. So so gearbox, transmission, a little harder to deal with. Doesn't really want to shift gears well. I think a lot of drivers had trouble earlier in the season with downshifts, just trying to get the car in a lower gear. Obviously a little less speed, a little more body roll, so not suspension, not near as good as what you get in the current spec. And it's a little slower, but still punches a big hole in the air. So that means there's going to be some really fun drafts during the course of the race. And so it's just a matter of, a lot of these drivers. And that was actually, as a matter of fact, I was kind of watching some videos in the Ray Esports Discord of Andrew Wozencroft. His last weekend was in the Spec Miata driving at Sonoma, which was recently repaved. Track looks great. He was having fun, not necessarily all good fun. Sometimes he had a little bad luck as well. Got into an accident, which was really, cool to see. He's obviously okay. He's out on the track tonight. So, it's just, like I said, a little bit older car, still fun to drive. These guys are still having a good time. And I think, us having 17 drivers out here tonight is proof that this is a really good track that drivers enjoy driving.
And we've got a pretty stacked grid for us tonight as well when it comes to the Spec Miata race. Of course, Miles Grab's still up there at the front. He's on the provisional pole with about 4 minutes left to go in this qualifying session. Andrew Wozencroft, who we're still running on board with, heading his way through the toe of turn number 7, uphill climb before he goes onto this mini back straightaway before he goes into the heel, which may or may not be an overtaking opportunity. It depends on how these drivers negotiate the boot section here of this circuit. But if you look through the left-hand side of your screen with the wonderful SDK graphics that we have, you can see in P number 12, our old pal Greg Ginsburg is with us here tonight. He is going to be part of the broadcast and the festivities of the SCCA running at Watkins Glen this upcoming weekend. So he's getting a little bit of research around Watkins Glen. And hey, I'll tell you what, running in this series, it's a fantastic way to get some research. He's currently in P12. Does he jump up the running order in that number 72 car? No, I think he may have been on an ad lap. We'll just have to see how our old pal does between now and the end of this qualifying session. And it's still Miles Grab at the front. We're coming to crunch time here, and it's interesting to see what kind of strategies these drivers are trying to apply when it comes to this qualifying session. The slipstream is a big role in these races, but it's not as big as we'll see from the Spec Racer Fords later on this evening. I was doing a little bit of espionage, seeing these drivers drive around in the practice sessions, and it was only about 5 miles an hour that the drivers were gaining, being in the draft heading into the inner loop that we see Greg Ginsburg go through right now, clattering those curbs. The inner loop is probably going to be a real trouble spot for all of these drivers. Charles, I think it's probably easier to mention the sections of the track that won't catch drivers out compared to the ones that will.
Well, actually, I don't think it's as, turn one obviously is a matter of it's more of a matter of not necessarily of handling the corner, because the corner itself is not that challenging a corner, is handling the traffic in the corner. And I think that's where a lot of bad things happen. Same with the S's. The S's, obviously, we talked about it before the broadcast. I think every league event I've ever been involved with at Watkins has had a big wreck of the S's. And it's just, you try and go too wide through there, and there's really not that much room for error. Either driver makes a mistake, you have an accident, car gets sideways, and there's nowhere for every car behind them to go. And it just, I've seen dozens of cars being involved in that. The inner loop, also known as the bus stop, but it's the inner loop here. Yes, it's one of those that you have to get your entry correct, your speed correct, get your exit correct, and all those in sequence. So very, very difficult corner because of the curbs. And then I think the other one is the exit corner coming out of the boot section, back on where it joins back to where we would be the NASCAR back straight, coming into the last two corners of the track. It's just because of the way the camber of that corner is. It's just, you've got to be right in the pocket when you go through there. If you're a little wide, you tend to stay wide. The camber kind of dives away from you, and you end up in the outside barrier. You get too close to the inside, you're up on that inside curb, and it kind of hooks the car. So that's the final one. And then obviously the final corner is where you're trying to just maximize your speed through there to get that run down the front straight. And you'll see lots of people just kind of banging it off that Armco on the outside.
A good point to mention as well when it comes to the tight, twisty nature of many sections of this race course, shifting is going to be a huge factor in this race. These drivers are going to be banging through the gears, and maybe we'll just have to wait and see if a driver occasionally gets one of those gear shifts wrong. We have 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds, in fact, to go in this qualifying session before we'll see that checkered flag. This series admin, Stevie Ray, who actually broke the news to us right before this broadcast started, right on the subject of shifting gears. His H pattern broke, so he is relying solely on the paddle shifters, which is not ideal in a race car like this, whether it's this or whether it be my experience driving any sort of NASCAR stock car. It feels a little bit odd just using the paddle shifters in a car like that, in the same way that if you're driving like a Formula car, it would be weird using an H pattern driving like an F1 car or something like that. So we'll see how Stevie does with that small little setback. I dealt with something very similar in a preseason Thunder race that we had from the Ray Esports Racing League before we kicked this season off many moons ago. I know the pain, and running wide coming into turn at number 9 actually hits the barrier. Stevie is not going to improve, not ideal for him. Miles Crab is still at the front. Kyle Robertson, this man that we're following heading through the heel, he's putting together a decent qualifying session. He's currently in P number 8 at a 2:12.116, and I gotta say, incredibly close stuff throughout a vast majority of this field. Miles Crab is the only real breakaway, setting a lap time about 8/10 of a second quicker than Corey Heffron in P number 2. But then from Kramer all the way back, Kramer at a 2:11.664, all the way down to this man Robertson at a 2:12.1, and he can really go back as far as Sherman and Ginsburg there. Pretty close all throughout this field. I think the midfield in this race is going to be absolutely ridiculous, but amazing to watch as well.
I absolutely agree with that. And that, I think, once again, it just goes back to driver familiarity with the track. You'll see these, the more laps you run, the more consistent you're going to get. And, when you've got drivers of similar aptitude on the track, you're going to get similar lap times out of them. And you can see this here in the midfield. It looks like it's going to be a good race. Miles may get to break away and kind of drive by himself a little bit, but from 2 back to, all the way back the rest of the field, it might be a lot closer than we expect. And, but it's going to make for some good racing.
Lap 1 is going to be insane. I think the whole race and the whole field is going to be a madhouse, from Miles Crab all the way through to this man, Wayne Buttermore, who's just crossing the finish line now. He ends up in P17 in this qualifying session. So the checkered flag has been out for quite some time, and I think all the drivers have been yoinked back to the pits by the iRacing gods. So we may be able to get the starting grid for you in just a couple of moments' time. Miles Crab is going to be leading them to green, as he has done throughout a vast majority of this season. Corey Heffron in P number 2 Trent Kramer in third, Andrew Rosencroft in fourth, Josh Justice in fifth, Tom Laurie in sixth, Charles Bowley, a newcomer to the series, in P number 7, Kyle Robertson in eighth, Andrew Love in ninth, and Michael Snow will round out your top 10.
Yeah, starting in 11th is Seth Spolman. Mark Sherman is in 12th. In 13th, we've got Greg Ginsberg, Stevie Ray in 14th, Rich Green in 15th, Joaquin Effinger in 16th, Wayne Buttermore in 17th, and I believe Josh Soto just jumped in to the session right at the end of qualifying, which he starts from the back most time anyway, so he'll be very comfortable back there at 18th for our 18th driver, and that's a full grid.
18 cars, I think, may be the highest we've had so far this season. We're going to end this Spec Miata season before the runoffs on an absolute high. Stay tuned, everyone. This is going to be a fantastic race. And to put on this fantastic racing week in and week out, you need some equally fantastic sponsors as well. And here with the Ray Esports Racing League, we have them in spades. Here at the Spec Miatas, they've been a continual partner of the series for quite some time, and that is Grassroots Motorsports. Built for true sports car enthusiasts, Grassroots Motorsports has one mission: to be your personal guide to the sports car world. Whether it be online at grassrootsmotorsports.com, in print, or at the track, the racers, mechanics, and car nerds at Grassroots Motorsports will take you behind the scenes of the racing world and teach you how to improve your car. Grassroots Motorsports has a taste of everything that you may want out of this hobby that we all love. Whether you want to hear stories about 1,000 horsepower track monsters or cool street cruisers built in a driveway, they have got you covered. Grassroots also has a collection of staff-maintained project cars and a catalog of articles as well. Articles breaking down the ins and outs of cars ran in a garage with greasy hands rather than typed from behind a desk in a prim and proper office. If you'd like to read, learn, and be a part of the story, head on over to grassrootsmotorsports.com. We would like to thank Grassroots Motorsports for their generous support of the Ray Esports Racing League. With that, then, this Spec Miata race that we have coming up in just a few moments' time would not be possible. That Porsche pace car is going to make that veering turn down pit lane, and now the field is in the hands of Miles Crabb. The green flag is out early, and the drivers are on their way. Turn number 1 is going to be a real trouble spot for a lot of these drivers. Don't want to pick up a slowdown, don't want to run into your competitors. You got to find that compromise, and Miles Crabb is going to be leading them into turn number 1. Fantastic start for Justice. That's a terrible start for those drivers involved in incidents farther in the back. I see Stevie Ray, Andrew Rosencroft involved in that as well. You can see that bent up bumper on the back of Andrew Rosencroft's number 80 car. That's not an ideal start for either of those drivers. Miles Crabb, meanwhile, he has got a fantastic getaway. He's going to be leading them going onto the back straightaway to begin lap number 1, as we have some bump drafting going on right behind.
Yeah, you're going to see this a lot when you get on these straightaways. You get the bump draft going. That actually may keep these drivers in contact with Crab for a little bit longer. Yeah, on that start, it was like Stevie Ray maybe just missed a braking point, couldn't see it, and just barreled into turn 1. Right in the middle of the pack, kicked a couple cars out, and Stevie says, you know what, I don't think it's my night. I'm just going to get out of here.
I think he may be getting a little bit of added practice time in the Spec Racer Fords we have coming up, and we're taking a look at the replay, and it's turn 1 is just so inviting at this track. You go into it and you think, oh yeah, I can go in here. There's a whole lot of runoff area, but that runoff area is unforgiving, and the turn in general is unforgiving as well. And sadly, that was put on full display. I think I saw Tom Laurie involved in that as well. He picked up a little bit of piece of those spinning cars right in front of him. And looking through, I think Trent Kramer did not take the start, so we already have a few casualties from this race, and we're not even one lap in. Here's another angle of that first lap, first turn. Shamazel heading into turn number 1. Stevie goes for the dive, and it's very hard racing on lap 1. That was riding on board with Laurie with that fantastic whack. That was not ideal for him. Man, that was the drama that we were expecting on lap 1 was probably what we were expecting to come a few corners earlier, considering your experience of broadcasting races at this track, Charles. We weren't really expecting turn number 1 to cause the drama that we saw there. However, we just saw it happen.
Yeah, one is like, as you said, we see Justice just bounce off the outside wall there. It's a little tricky, as you saw. They tried to go 3 wide, just kind of ran out of room. It just kind of that corner just kind of tightens up as you work your way through it, and just kind of run out of racing room at that point. As you see them all going wide out there, coming out of the exits. But yeah, I did notice that Trenton Kramer actually got disconnected from the service right as the cars were starting their pace lap. So it looks like it was a internet connection issue, not him just deciding to leave.
I've actually done a little bit of investigative journalism to figure out what went wrong with Trent Kramer here this evening, and by investigative journalism I mean just taking a look at the Ray Esports Discord server. He updated his Windows PC earlier on, and apparently Windows decided it was a perfect time to just completely crash on him. So got a lot of technical issues. It's a sim racer's worst nightmare, and sadly Trent Kramer gets bit by that bullet here this evening. We're riding on board with Corey Heffron as he rounded his way around the outer loop, and you can see this pack of cars. Justice, Heffron, Robertson, Boley, and Andrew Love all covered by about 2 seconds as they go into the boot at the start of lap number 2. And one thing that we have to keep in mind as well, Charles, is this is probably one of the longest tracks we've run on so far this season, at least when it comes to lap time, as I think there may have been an incident farther in the back. I see some drivers shuffling around a little bit farther behind. Not ideal for them. Wayne Buttermore and Mark Sherman swapping positions as well. But this track is fairly long in terms of lap time, about 2 minutes 10. Well, it's a 2-minute lap time, a 2-minute 10 lap time, I should say, for our pole sitter Miles Crabb. So very, very long when it comes to the time that these drivers are spending on one single lap. So we're probably going to see a series low when it comes to laps actually being completed in this race.
Yeah, it is a long lap, and we talked about this last week. I was kind of under, before we announced that it was the boot section, I was kind of under the assumption they were going to run the short, I guess the NASCAR layout, which is about I think about a mile or so shorter, and would have made for about a minute 20, minute 30 lap time, which is what these cars normally run in most of the tracks. But no, we're going with the boot section, with the boot layout. With the bus stop, which obviously slows it down. You're not going down that back stretch at full speed for the entire length. So yeah, it adds a little bit to it, but it's still a fun race. And once again, these drivers, I'm sure, have driven every possible layout of this track at one time or another, just based on the frequency of this track being used. As we see Josh Justice falling back here, he's in a battle there with Boley, Robertson, and Heffron, and right behind Crabb, a couple seconds behind, battling for that podium positions there.
Justice started this flat-out blast in the lead of this pack as we see Heffron and Robertson going side by side, heading into the inner loop. Fantastic move from Heffron to hold on to that P2 spot. This, again, is a massive pack. It's been like that way ever since the start of lap number 1. That was terrible grammar from my end. The racing action as they went through the inner loop is getting my English skills all kinds of screwed up, but that was not ideal for Josh Justice. I'm curious if he picked up a slowdown. Oh, and Boley is dropping back. I think he's gone off the track. He may have blown up a motor. At least that was a call from our producer Josh. We may have to figure out if we can see that plume of smoke coming from the back of Boley's race car, the driver of the number 63 car, a newcomer I believe to this series, heading in to the chute into turn number 6. Oh yeah, there you go, that big old whack from the engine. Well, that's one of the first money shifts we've seen from this race, and first money shift we've seen in a couple weeks, Charles.
Yeah, it really is. And him being a newcomer to it, he may be a little less experienced with the spec Miata here on iRacing, and so if he's thinking it's the current MX-5, which is a little bit harder to do that with, and so yeah, it doesn't surprise me that we get a new person in for the first week and he just figures out, oh, you can't really do that with this car. So yeah, it's a learning experience. But give him a chance to get that experience, and he'll learn from it for the next time he's going to race these cars. Maybe he'll be back next season and can participate the entire season.
You can tell from the daytime television talk show noise that I made when I heard Boley's engine blow up. That was just the sound of money exploding, folks. Thankfully, we are in the sim rather in real life. That would be a pretty hefty whack if it was in real life. We're following Seth Spohn in P number 6. He is knocking on his doors of Andrew Love a little bit farther up the road. The gap between those two is a little bit over a second. And I think we may be able to find some replays of what happened to our old pal Greg Ginsburg earlier on in this race, as we see some bump drafting between Heffron and Robertson. Will they go for a move heading into this section? We're coming into the midsection of this race, so maybe these drivers start to be a bit less aggressive, and they're like, hey, we need to whittle away the laps and get to that finish before we can really go for an all-out assault. And I think this may be the replay here of what happened heading into the chute. What here? Ooh, running a little bit wide, carried a whole lot of speed, clips that grass, and goes spinning around like a top. Even with those reworked, ooh, and that was a pretty close call for Joaquin Effinger, who nearly T-boned into the side of him. But even with these reworked grass physics here in iRacing, and it's still like a slip and slide whenever you put one wheel off into the dirt.
Yeah, well, we've got the reworked grass physics, but we don't have reworked tire models on these cars. That is one of the downfalls, and I didn't mention it earlier. But this is at least 2 generations older tire model. So it's, they all work in conjunction with each other for the software. So I'm guessing that these cars just don't quite have the grip that the new tires do in iRacing. And an old damage model, our producer says, as you can tell from the bumps there on the car, the 77 car of Snow, Michael Snow. I think I will say this: Wozencroft has done a good job. He was down 10 positions after that lap 1, turn 1 incident, and has managed to work his way back up 4 spots, and he's up tracking down Snow to see if he can make a move there, and then he's going to have a pretty difficult gap to jump. Lori is about 6.5 seconds in front of this group, so this may be the one more position, unless something happens up front, that he's going to get back before this race is over. We're at just past the 9-minute mark.
These race cars just look so incredibly sad. The back of Andrew Wozencroft's car is particularly beat up. We're going to get a good view of it as he heads through turn number 1, and all that just looks incredibly depressing. And Snow's car as well, with a whole lot of damage on both the front and rear of it. I'm not sure how Snow picked up that damage. There may have been some sort of stack up. It may have been that stack up in turn number 1. He's just got clouded from some cars around him. We may be able to find a replay to see how these drivers picked up that damage. This was at the very beginning of that race. We're following Josh Soto in the 07 car, who's made up a whole lot of positions. We'll touch on that in just a few moments' time, and you can still see the damage on the back of Wozencroft's car in the early stages of this race. I think that was just one of the moves that Soto pulled off at the very beginning of this race. Take a look at this replay here. This was the major contact heading through turn number 1. And I'm trying to look to see, you can see Michael Snow in the midst of that as well. That's how he picked up the rear end damage on that MX-5 race car, Spec Miata race car, I should say. Get the nomenclature correct on this broadcast. A little bit of contact with a very wrinkled up MX-5 Spec Miata race cars. We see some more shuffling for those final podium positions. It's now Robertson in P2, Heffron in P3, and Justice in P4. We may take a look at a replay to see those moves. It's probably heading into the inner loop. That may be the big overtaking opportunity for a lot of these drivers, using that slipstream and a run coming out of turn number 1 to their full advantage. Robertson and Heffron trading blows at the very north end of the field, with Miles Crab continuing to pull away, and this is just some side-by-side action heading into turn number 1. A very smooth move from Kyle Robertson to make his way into second.
That was a great pass, and that's exactly the way you want to do it, is to get on the inside there going into the inner loop, and just take the preferred line through there, and nice easy pass and not much fighting. As now we're looking at Josh Soto, and he started in the back. He's up 13 positions, but he's gaining about 0.6 of a second per lap on the leader, and he's only about 6 or maybe 7 seconds back. So I don't know that he's got enough time to catch him, but man, he's making a charge up through the field.
Oh, this is an incredible drive from Josh Soto, cutting his way through the field like a hot knife through butter, now up into P number 4. And we may see that change here in just a few moments' time, as Robertson and Heffron are going to go side by side yet again, heading into the inner loop. We still have about 8 minutes left to go in this race, but these two are battling like it's a final lap of the race. And ooh, you can see that's a fantastic move from Heffron around the outside, heading into the inner loop. I nearly saw Josh Soto running through the grass and hitting the curb dramatically there. Coming through the inner loop, he nearly looped that car heading through the inner loop, and now he's on the inside, soon to be the outside of Kyle Robertson, sliding their way down the chute into turn number 6. Is Robertson going to prevail? Is Soto going to move his way into the final podium positions? It's close between those two, and they're still side by side on exit. I thought Robertson was going to clear him, but no, they're still side by side heading into the toe. This is some fantastic stuff between these two, and look at Josh Justice gang in the middle of that as well. Soto moving his way way into P at number 3, but it's only a matter of when, not if, that he may lose out on that spot yet again. Robertson and Justice going side by side through the boot, about to head their way into the heel. They're going to hit the brakes right about now. You can see those front noses on those cars duck down, and with that hard battling, you can see some drivers a little bit farther behind getting involved in the chaos and getting involved in the drama as well. Seth Spolman and Andrew Love are within striking distance. If any of these drivers make a little bit of a teeny tiny mistake, it is a matter of millimeters separating these drivers from a fantastic podium or top 5 to a soul-crushing finish just outside the top 10.
Yeah, it's that, and that's basically it, right? It just takes one mistake to ruin your race and potentially other drivers' races as well. Or, pick up some free spots if somebody else makes a mistake.
Oh, my God. That was the first driver I've ever seen hit a barrel in my time broadcasting here on Apex Racing TV. That was a huge moment from Andrew Love, and right as we mentioned, the millimeter difference separating yourself from a fantastic top 5 run to a soul-crushing DNF. We just saw that put on full display from Andrew Love. We may take a look at a replay in the not-too-distant future once this battling up towards the north end of the field may cool off. It's not going to cool off now. It is going to heat up. Heffron is a sitting duck. Soto pulling out on the outside, going down the back straightaway. Robertson looking to challenge as well. They're not going to go 3 wide into this corner. Surely they're nearly making side-by-side contact. Heading into the inner loop, Soto is going to clear him to move into P number 2. Heffron still holding his own in P at number 3. Robertson in 4th, and you can see those drivers. That was a beautiful camera shot, Josh, of seeing those drivers just clobber and slam into those curbs going through the inner loop. It's a matter of millimeters separating these drivers from a simply hideous accident. Speaking of a hideous accident, it was a race car that looks pretty hideous after an accident, but Michael Snow is still down and getting jiggy with it as he's trying to get a move done on Mark Sherman to move his way into P number 8 with Andrew Rosencroft involved in that as well. And man, those are some of the ugliest looking MX-5 race cars I've seen in my life, but they are still pushing it to the absolute limit. And while this man Miles Crab is just pulling away and having a fairly comfortable ride up at the front, it's been chaos farther behind, and we may take a look at a replay to see that incident with Andrew Love. That was a major moment. You can see him all kinds of squirrely coming his way around turn at number 10, runs a little bit wide. You can see that understeer hits that wall, and a little bit of suspension damage, and that's a big hit for Andrew Love. Thankfully we're running in the sim and not in real life, otherwise you'd probably have a multitude of injuries after that substantial hit into those sand barrels on the end of pit lane. Here's another angle, this time from above. Andrew Love clips that outside wall and has a vicious hit into the sand barrels. Wow, Charles, I am absolutely ecstatic the fact that iRacing does not have sand physics worked out. Otherwise, that would be a major cleanup after that incident for Love.
Absolutely, yeah, that would have been basically would have been a red flag to get the track cleaned off because it was pretty much a head-on collision. I don't think I've ever seen a car. I've seen incidents like that where you get cars side by side coming through the last corner and a car getting just kind of pushed over to that line, but never one that's came across the track like that off of the outside wall with that tight of an angle. So it's a pretty bizarre little incident, but yeah, I'm sure it was a jolt when he hit there. Even in the simmer, it was probably not the most pleasant feeling he's ever had. As we're looking now on board with Corey Heffron, looks like he's battling there with the rear of Corey Heffron. He's looking back at Kyle Robertson, still battling for third. Josh Soto has cleared these guys. He's up in P2, and he's put 2 seconds on them already, and he is hot on the trail of Miles Crab. He's going to try and make that 5.5 seconds up here in the next 2 laps, I think, is all they're going to have left.
Yeah, not a whole lot of time left to go, and I think we're going to take a look at a replay of some of the passes and the action and the drama that we had for those final podium positions. This was a move that Josh Soto pulled off to break away from that chaos in the final podium position, slot his way into P number 2, and what started his charge towards Miles Crab at the very north end of the field. Fairly textbook stuff, had the assistance of maybe a bump draft from Kyle Robertson heading into that inner loop, but still pretty nice stuff from Josh Soto to move his way into P number 2. Started this this race all the way at the back, and the driver of the 07 car has cut his way through the field like a hot knife through butter, up 16 spots from where he started this race. Absolutely unbelievable for the driver who didn't even bother saying a time in practice or qualifying, wasn't even here for practice and qualifying. He has come into the race, and he's come into this race with a vengeance. I think it's too little too late if he wants to catch up to Miles Crabbe, is going to be taking the 2 to go this time by, but still a very honorable effort from Josh Soto.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think he's got, I mean, I guess Crabbe could make a mistake and help him pick that time up, but yeah, it's going to be a tough ask to pick up 5.5 seconds in 2 laps. Even though he's on a pretty good clip, so we'll see what he can do with it. But yeah, it was a nice move. I think Robertson was following behind Soto to give him a push and hopefully sneak through. But the draft is just not that strong. Had this been the next race in the spec racers, both guys would have got through on the outside there and made that pass nice and easy. So we'll be looking for very much the same situation coming up in the next race.
That SRF race we have coming up is going to be absolutely insane. I have a feeling that Miles Crabbe is not going to be as comfortable as he's been all throughout this race. Has a 5.5 second gap, which is closing between himself and Josh Soto. Could be Josh Soto just pushing it like absolute hell to try and have any sort of hope of winning this race if there is a mistake from Miles Crabbe, which, hey, it could happen. We've seen stranger things from just this race, let alone this season and this series as a whole. But Josh Soto, still commendable drive to end up in P at number 2, which he may, as long as he keeps this final lap and a third clean. But Miles Crabbe, he is going to be feeling a lot less comfortable in this SRF race. For Corey Heffron, Kyle Robertson, and Josh Justice's sake, I hope they have a much more calm race as they've had, along with Andrew Wozencroft and Michael Snow. They have been embroiled in drama all throughout this race, got a piece of that lap 1, turn 1 schmozzle, and they're still battling hard. They're running in the final their final 2 positions inside that top 10, with Wayne Buttermore hounding them from right behind. He's going to try and look to pick up the pieces if these 2 come to blows. And I will say, they were battling Mark Sherman not very long ago, but with that damage they have on those cars, you can see the boot lid, I guess it would be, to appease our British bosses here at Apex Racing TV, the boot lid, the trunk lid, whatever you want to call it. Whatever it is, it's sticking out quite badly on both of those race cars, and it is hurting them badly going down the flat-out blast here at Watkins Glen. Wozencroft and Snow still have only 1 more lap to go, along with this man, Miles Crabbe. It is borderline between them taking the white flag, but they did take the white flag. Miles Crabbe, 1 more lap to go to close off this win and close off this season championship here in the Spec Miatas. He's already the champion in the Formula Fords. He's going to have a chance to close it out over this man, Tom Laurie, who's had a fairly quiet race, running down in P7 as things stand, currently effectively in no man's land. And this is the fight we need to keep our eyes on. It's for the final podium position for the final Spec Miata race of this season. Heffron's running in that P3 spot right now, but he has Kyle Robertson hounding him, going side by side up through the S's. They're going to be side by side again, going down the back straightaway. Actually, no, Robertson ducking in to try and salvage that slipstream. The slipstream isn't too strong on these Spec Miata race cars, but it is valuable, as Robertson is trying to prove that with an overtake down the inside into the inner loop. They're not backing out of it, and it's going to be Heffron holding it in, and look at Josh Justice closing his way in to the 2 of them through the inner loop. That's a fantastic run for the driver of the 99 car. He is not out of this fight. This is a 3-car dogfight for that P3 spot, and it's any man's game as they go down the chute on this last lap. Justice now trying to get the move done on Roberts, nearly hit the back of Heffron as they went into turn number 6. That is very close stuff between all of them, and you gotta look at the cars a little bit farther behind. Seth Spallman is there to pick up the pieces. If any of these drivers come to blows with how hard they've been battling, it is definitely not out of the realm of possibilities. This is the major drama that we have up towards the north end of the field, but at the very front of the field, it looks like it's going to be Miles Crabbe taking a dominant win. We'll talk about him in a few moments' time. We may see a move into turn number 8 here. It's still Heffron in P3. Justice very close behind, and Robertson closing that gap. It looked like he dropped back a teeny tiny bit coming through that outer loop. However, he has closed up that gap dramatically. But this man, Miles Crabbe, he hasn't had to worry about any battles. He hasn't had to pull off off any balls to the wall, ballsy moves around the outside or down the inside, heading into the inner loop. He has just kept it clean and driven off into the sunset. Miles Crabbe in the number 131 car. He's won in the Formula Fords, and he's going to win the championship in the Spec Miatas as well. Miles Crabbe, your winner at Watkins Glen, and the champion from Season 11 of the Ray Esports Racing League. Josh Soto finishes in P number 2, and it's close at the line, but it's Corey Heffron rounding at the podium in the Spec Miata category. The driver of the 52 car putting on a very mesmerizing drive, and ooh, a little bit of a mesmerizing spin from Kyle Robertson. I think you'll just lightly back that car into that blue Armco barrier. And wow, Charles, we're expecting some drama from this race, and the drama still isn't over yet. Michael Snow's going to end up in P number 9. That was a big wall tap from Wayne Buttermore coming out of that final turn. He saw an opportunity to try and move his way into the top 10. It was so close, yet so far away for Wayne Buttermore. He ends up in P number 11. But man, Charles, we were expecting a whole lot of drama from this race, and we got it from the get-go, and right towards the end, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was a great race. And yeah, I mean, Crabbe he set off and, had anybody be able to just kind of hang with him, maybe hold him up a little bit, fight him. This might have been a much closer finish at the end with Soto making that charge from the back. But no, Crabbe's been dominant pretty much all season. So great win for him tonight. Congratulations on the championship. Great battle between Heffron, Justice Robertson, there toward the end of the race. It's like those guys were pretty much just tied together with shoestrings, as well as Snow and Wozencroft. I thought Wozencroft was going to get by. He had done well to make up some of the positions he lost from the turn 1 incident. But no, he got up to Michael Snow, and Snow said, "No, I think you're going to stay behind me for the rest of the race." And so Snow able to hold off Wozencroft for P9.
That was an incredible race, probably the most exciting we've had from the Spec Miatas all season long, and I think all the cars have taken the checkered flag in a race here at the Glen that saw driver disconnects, technical issues, drivers slamming into sand barrels, and some awesome racing as well. We'll get the results here in just a couple of moments' time. I think we're waiting for one more car possibly to take that checkered flag. Some stragglers a little bit farther in the back. Nope, we have the results for you right now. It's Miles Crabbe winning it over Josh Soto, who's our hard charger in this race, ending up 16 positions up from where he started this race all the way at the tail end of the field. Very commendable drive from the both of them. Miles Crabbe, our champion, we may have a chat with in a few moments' time. Josh Soto ends up in P2, as I said. Corey Heffron is going to round out your podium in P number 3. He did not have it easy, neither did Josh Justice, who ends up in 4th. Kyle Robertson, who rounds at your top 5. Seth Spaldman, who had a fantastic view of that battling all throughout the race. He ends up a little bit farther behind in P number 6. Tom Laurie in 7th. Not ideal for the driver who is the closest to Miles Crabbe coming into this round. Mark Sherman in P number 8. Michael Snow and Andrew Wozencroft going to round out your top 10 in some race cars ready for the scrap heap.
Yeah, Wayne Buttermore actually was in that battle with Snow and Wozencroft, finished 11th. Joaquin Effinger finished in P12. Greg Ginsburg 2 laps down in 13th. Andrew Love 5 laps down in 14th. Charles Bowley 8 laps down in 15th. Rich Green 8 laps down in 16th. Stevie Ray, obviously with the turn 1 lap 1 incident, finishes in 17th. And Trenton Kramer disconnected, unfortunately, right before the race start to finish out our 18 car position grid.
So those are going to be your results from the Spec Miatas at Watkins Glen, the final Spec Miata race before the runoffs at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course coming up in just 1 week's time. And this man, Miles Crabbe, who I have a quick little chat with before we move on to the Spec Racer Fords. Well, Miles, congratulations on a pretty dominant win here this evening at the Glen, and also congratulations on the Spec Miata Championship. Talk us through this somewhat boring race meeting for you, and just talk us through the Spec Miata season as a whole.
First off, I need to thank Trenton Kramer for winning me this race, because if he hadn't lagged out as the race started, I would have started with qualifying fuel in the car. So thanks to him, I was able to thanks to his internet connection, I was able to put 4 gallons in it. Yeah, I didn't intend for it to be boring. Josh Soto tried to catch me. The race lost 2 seconds of pace. I don't know if the temperature spiked or what, but the race was totally different from all the other sessions. But anyway, yeah, it's been a fun season. I like that we've added this car over the Global MX-5 car, and yeah, I don't know, it's been fun.
And put on a heck of a show right behind you. That fight for the final few podium positions was hectic from start to finish. If you get a chance to look at this broadcast later on in the coming days, you'll be in for a treat with the battling that was going on right behind you. But just talk us through this race from your perspective. You mentioned there the saving grace of Trent Kramer's connection issues, saving you from not starting this race without the fuel. But as you mentioned, a little bit tricky trying to match those times from the qualifying session. Were there a whole lot of curveballs for you to try and deal with to get that car into victory lane?
No, not really. I nailed the start. I was being really nice and didn't try to time it or anything. I just went when it said green. And there's always a little bit of a risk of going down the turn one and somebody sliding into you, and I saw a little kerfluffle behind me. But no, it was kind of just hitting my marks, and I knew once they battled on like the third lap, I would have a decent enough lead to I could probably keep it. And then, like I said, I saw Josh go from 7 seconds back to 6 seconds back. And then one curveball was, I think I've worn out my shifter this season doing this car. And one time I decided I was not in fourth gear when I lifted for the last turn. And that was interesting. That's why he went from 6.5 back to 5.5 back. I had no drive for a moment. But other than technical issues, yeah, it's just readjust. Like for turn one was easy fourth gear, easy corner, and in the race it turned into a third gear, really kind of slow corner. It was weird, but curveballs like that in the variable temperature in this league is what makes it fun, because you can practice a lot on a really fast track and be totally lost when it comes to the race.
Brought up a very good point there, that being turn number one being a source of melees at Watkins Glen, and we're going to a track that's very similar like that for the runoffs, that being the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course in 1 week's time. That turn one is going to be absolutely hectic in the 3 races we have coming up that evening. So what are your thoughts heading into the runoffs in 1 week's time?
Yeah, turn one, and really the switch back to turn two. I distinctly remember Nick Heidfeld rolling a Sauber there in a Formula One race. But yeah, Indy's an interesting track. It's not super technical. I don't know if we're running the F1 circuit or the IndyCar circuit, but I vote F1 for the carousel portion. Anyway, yeah, it's a good little roval. I think I did pretty good the last time we had the runoff, or that may have been a long time ago. Whenever we ran Pro Mazdas, I had fun at that track. But yeah, anyway, thank y'all for broadcasting all season. It's been fun. And hi to Bray, hi Jessica, hi Ren, hi Steven, hi Mom. And I'm going to see if I can go win this Spec Racer race.
Yeah, I was just about to say that we're probably holding you up from qualifying for that race. It's starting in just a couple of moments' time. Congratulations on the Spec Miata Championship. Congratulations on the win. And hopefully we can have a chat with you after the Spec Miata race, not the Spec Miata, the Spec Racer Ford race coming up in just a few moments' time. Thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you. Hopefully I don't cause the big one on the straightaway bump drafting like I did a couple years ago.
Well, for your sake, we'll have our fingers crossed for you, Miles. Thank you, thank you for joining us. Good luck on that part.
It's not me. It's everybody else.
Alrighty, fair enough. I will still say Godspeed to you, just trying to avoid any sort of melees that may happen in this race.
Thank you.
And that was Miles Crabb, our champion from the Spec Miatas, and we got the Spec Racer Fords coming up. Charles, you've done the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors for a lot longer than I have. You have a lot of experience with the way these cars race. Talk the viewers through that absolute melee and exciting action that we have coming up in just a couple of moments' time.
It's going to be much more difficult for Miles. As good as he is, as he's been this season, it's going to be much more difficult for him to get away. We got some really talented Spec Racer drivers, and those cars draft so well that it's just going to be. It may something like we saw, I guess, a couple seasons ago in the Weekend Warriors at VIR when they're coming up, coming up to Oak Tree, and that's that long snaking, group of cars. It's going to be something very similar to that. You're going to see lots of cars drafting, bump drafting, 2 or 3 wide, passing in the spots. So yeah, it's going to be fantastic. So stick around for it.
That is a fantastic preview of this race that we have coming up. If it's anything like that Spec Miata race we just had, it is going to be nuts. So for the viewers tuning in to Apex Racing TV for this broadcast tonight, stay tuned after this commercial break because it is going to be absolutely hectic. We'll be right back with the Spec Racer Fords after these messages.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Alrighty everyone, welcome back here to the Ray Esports Racing League at Watkins Glen. It's now time for the Spec Racer Fords, and I'll tell you what, that Spec Miata race was absolutely insane. The SRS with much more powerful slipstream, so powerful in fact I won't be too shocked if they actually have vacuum cleaners attached to the back end of these race cars. It is going to be nuts here at the Glen. Charles, you were talking about before we went to commercial break about what kind of great racing we're going to have here this evening, and even though we have a little bit of a smaller field compared to what we saw in the Spec Miatas, this race is going to be intense. So this is a little bit of a loaded question, but right now that we're approaching the end of that qualifying session, who's your pick to possibly be one of the front runners for this race?
Well, I'm going to tell you, there's a couple of guys, and only because I see them on Sundays as well, with the Weekend Warriors have been in there for quite a while. Josh Justice and Christian Kabanka are both obviously very, very skilled Spec Racer drivers. They're very familiar with this track. Obviously, when we do Weekend Warriors, it's, we've got 15 cars out here tonight. We're going to have 50 there probably this weekend for a 40-minute race. And it's absolutely insane. The draft is worth about a half of a second on the front straight and the back straight. So you'll see if you're it's kind of like we saw at, I guess, Homestead earlier this season, where if you're a half second back, or if you're in the third car in line, you may have the advantage over the front two, just because of how powerful the slipstream is. Also, along with the bump drafting, these guys are really skilled at doing it. So I hate doing that because I generally end up with commentator cursing somebody, But I think both Justice and Kabanka can overcome that and have a good race.
I'm actually looking through some of the other drivers we have in this race. I see a certain Morgan Burkhardt in this session. I think he is still in the session, unless I'm very much mistaken. He probably has a set qualifying time. He's done this before in this series. He'll probably do it again. The driver who's currently in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Series, who I'm very proud of, considering I knew him back when he was a wee little lad, when I myself was also a wee little lad. It's nice to see what he's done in the racing world. Has more talent in one of his fingers than I have in my entire body. But I think we're coming to the end of this qualifying session. You brought up a very good point there, Charles. The slipstream is going to be huge. It didn't play a huge role in the Spec Miatas. It was only about like 3 to 5 miles an hour that these drivers were gaining being in the draft, both half a second. That is going to be huge in this qualifying session that we see right now, and the race that we have coming up later on this evening. We're riding on board with Andrew Wilsoncroft, the driver of the number 80 car, hoping to finish this race with a much cleaner looking race car than he did in those Spec Miatas earlier on this evening, and he remains in P3 with a checkered flag out in this qualifying session. So I think he just squeaked over the finish line before the end of the session. That's a big spin for Heffron. He keeps it out of the barriers. Nicely played from Corey Heffron, and Wilsoncroft, sadly for him, he's going to have to back out the gas dramatically. He's lost his drafting partner, so he is going to remain in P3. It's Christian Kabanka up at the front at a 204.806, and Miles Crabbe in P2, who I think will quickly take a look at the championship points before we get into the meat and potatoes of this race meeting with the Spec Racer Force. It's looking fairly cut and dry for Miles Crabbe as well, trying to do the math in my head, and while remembering the math I did before the start of this broadcast, it's a 31-point gap between Miles Crabbe and Josh Justice there in P1 and P2 respectively. Crabbe, he's just put on a clinic all throughout this season. He has been consistent and consistently fast as well. He's going to look to try and seal the deal and get his third championship from this season from the 4 that we have available. So those are the points. You can see Justice, Spolman, Russell, Ray, Tarantino, Kabanka, Wilsoncroft, Huffman, Sherman, all the heavy hitters. Justin Huffman, who has mostly been played by his son Jameson Huffman, he was actually the reigning champion here in the Spec Racer Fords. He is not going to defend with a pretty substantial points gap, over 56 points between himself and Miles Crabbe. Actually, no, exactly 56 points. You can tell I was always good in math class, but those are the championship points. It's fairly cut and dry for Miles Crabbe. As long as he keeps it on the road, he is going to be your champion from the 2024 Spring Tour of the Ray Esports Series season from in the Spec Racer Fords. Try saying all that 5 times fast. So we're approaching the end of this qualifying session now, and yeah, only 13 cars, I believe, are going to take this start, but hey, actually, no, it's going to be 15, my apologies. 15 cars, though, Charles, still going to be intense.
It will be, and it's going to be fun to watch Morgan Burkhardt make his way through the field, because obviously he's a very talented driver. So he'll make some good passes, but obviously he's not just a good talented driver in real life, but he's been in this series before. He's been the champion of this series before, so he's going to do he'll be quick, but he'll be fair, and he'll work his way through the field and not give anybody too much of a hard time as he's doing so. But it's going to be fun to kind of watch him and see how far he can get up to the front before the end of the race. So yeah, it's going to be a fun race. So just sit back and enjoy this, because there'll be lots of slingshots being done here.
I think I've described many Spec Racer Fords, whether it be in this series or the Weekend Warriors series. I've described many Spec Racer Ford races as being 120-mile-an-hour games of leapfrog. This race is going to be absolutely no exception, being flat out from the exit of turn number 1 all the way through into the inner loop, along with some other flat out sections as well, including that start-finish straightaway where we may see a driver get a little bit racy heading into turn number 1, especially on lap 1. We've got a whole lot of stuff to look forward to from this race. We'll just have to wait and see how things shake out. So the qualifying session is over, and we're going to get the starting grid for you in just a couple of moments time. It's going to be Christian Kabanka, the driver of the 178 car, starting this race from the pole. Miles Crabb, our presumptive champion in the Spec Racer Fords, will join him on the front row. That's Andrew Rosencroft in P number 3, Josh Justice in 4th, Joseph Tarantino in P number 5, Scott Russell, the driver from New Jersey, in the number 22 car, is going to be starting this race in 6th, Corey Heffron in 7th, and Stevie Ray will round out your first 4 rows.
All right, Seth Bowman in 9th, Mark Sherman the edge of the top 10, Kyle Robertson in 11th, Wayne Buttermore 12th. 13th is, I believe, the newcomer, Andre Jameson. Joaquin Effinger in 14th, and Morgan Burkhardt will be shotgunning the field starting 15th and be working his way up pretty quickly, I would assume.
I think we have a just picture-perfect replay of what happened with Josh Soto during that first Spec Miata race. He made up 16 spots between the start and the finish. And before we get this race started, we should probably thank Personal Wealth Solutions. Just like in racing, financial planning and investments require a team behind and experience as well. Personal Wealth Solutions creates custom investment and financial planning strategies for select individuals and businesses as well. With over 25 years of experience, their goal is not to have you feel like a number, but make you feel like they're number one. If you'd like to learn more about financial planning run by racers serving racers, head on over to www.personalwealthsolutions.com. They're the proud partner of the Spec Racer Fords, and this race is under green. They're going to be 3 wide heading into turn number 1. Miles Crabb on the middle there. Justice on the outside, sweeping around the outside. That is a bold and audacious move, but it's stuck there for Josh Justice. He's going to be leading. I'm actually known as going to be side by side with Kabanka. He briefly took the lead, but now going through the S's, it's going to be a dogfight between these 3. They may be 3 wide coming through the S's with some drivers bump drafting and hitting the wall a little bit farther behind, but now Miles Crabb is giving a bump draft to Josh Justice. We see some drivers trying to shuffle for position as well. 3 wide going down this back straightaway. Thankfully, Miles Crabb backs out of it. He wants no parts of 3 wide madness on lap number 1. Josh Justice with a big step, and he's got to take out our championship leader, Miles Crabb. And this is a big accident heading through the inner loop. Wayne Buttermore spinning off as well in a sympathy spin. Bodywork flying all over the place here coming out of the inner loop. Josh Justice, he went briefly off the track heading through that inner loop, hit that curb in a really bad way, and it just shot him into the side of Miles Crabb's race car. That was a calamitous start up towards the front of the Spec Racer Fords.
It absolutely was, and yeah, it's the whole problem with the bus stop is trying to go too wide through there. Is it's just you have to be inch perfect in either line, and obviously we saw what happened. The curbs just basically. Justice took the inside curb the wrong way and lost the rear end, could not catch it, and then took out, that was the top 2 guys that were in the championship battle. So Josh has effectively, I think, ended their races for the night. They'll probably try and tow back and get back in, but they're going to be probably at least a lap down before it's all said and done. So a tough night, and that's what I get for picking when I start giving names out at the beginning of the race. This is what happens. So, it's very sorry to Josh for the commentator curse. And we'll continue on with Kabanka out to a 2-second lead.
I may have to issue out a joint apology as well. We may take a look at a replay to see all that drama that happened at the very north end of the field at the very start of the race. And I'll tell you what, if all these drivers were running in real life and they used personal well solutions, they would be able to afford the repairs they need on their race cars. You can see Justice, he was down on the grass heading through the inner loop and just got all kinds of squirrely. Who was that T-boned into him? I think that was Kyle Robertson that T-boned into him heading through the inner loop. And man, Charles, I'm still catching my breath after that fastest ad read in human history before the start of that race. I'm probably going to develop some sort of migraine headache from the I guess, epoxy. I'm trying to think of the correct term as we see another replay of that big hit. And oh my God, that was a huge crash.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you could just see it as Justice just got on that inside curb in the first half of the chicane and just completely just lost the rear of the car. Tried to recover it, probably overcorrected a little bit, kicked him out to the right. I'm sure the second set of curbs did not help anything. I think we're having a little technical difficulty here, so we'll see if we can get that back, and we'll get the replay here with Crab and Tarantino. I'm sorry, is that right? Yep.
Actually, that is, you could see the tail end of that big incident that was happening a little bit farther up the road. And I think that was actually the number 25 car of Andre Jameson. So we're going to try and resolve the technical issues at the moment. It is still our driver that started up at the north end of the field, that being Christian Gabanka. He is leading them as things stand at the moment. We may see if teamwork makes a dream work, as we're getting the tail end shot of that hard battling between Jameson and Crab as they went through. And we're back to live action, folks. And finishing off that point I mentioned, I may be suffering from hypoxia after that very long-winded talk about Personal Well Solutions. It's one of the fantastic sponsors. I may need to redo that just so it's actually intelligible to people who are not an auctioneer and speak at 14 bajillion miles an hour. This is Stevie Ray. We're following him. He is running in a fantastic P3. He cut his way through the field with all that drama happening around him. And after that disappointing Spec Miata race, P3 would be a fantastic result for the series admin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Stevie's doing a great job as you see Kabaka out to a 3-second lead. He's Ray's trying to track down Scott Russell. He's only a couple tenths back. And so here's where we'll start seeing these runs up the back straight. Everybody getting the draft. You see Rosencroft behind Stevie giving him the bump draft. Or just real close, not really doing it, but not really bumping, but at least a good draft pack together. And they're able to jump out and make the pass over Russell. You'll see that more and more as this race goes. I'm shocked that Miles Crab is still in this race running fifth after that incident with Justice going through the inner loop on the first lap. And as we're continuing, going out of the chute here, we've got Crab heading down into the toe. He's still trying to track down this lead group of Ray, Rosencroft, and Russell in second, third, and fourth as they're making their way in through the toe and out down the bottom of the boot.
Hopefully any sort of technical issue I'm having has been fixed, but
we have it.
Is it okay? We are back rolling. Hopefully that wasn't a very bad technical issue from my end, and hopefully it doesn't manifest itself into something even worse. Hey, we saw some technical issues for the drivers during the first half of this broadcast. Hopefully we don't see some technical issues for the broadcasters in the second half of this night's festivities. But getting back to the point I was mentioning before my mic possibly gave out, Miles Crab is not out of the realm of possibility of him finishing this race in P number 2. You can see him, he's slowly reeling in that pack of Ray, Rosencroft, and Russell right up the road. So Miles Crab still has a very good shot of finishing this race in P2, which would be almightily impressive after that drama on lap 1.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be a fantastic result considering what he's endured already at the start of the race. And we see Stevie Ray around. And so that Stevie is off. And it just spins it. He got the tires overheated. And he's got to get that car straightened back out. And he's back headed in the right direction again. He's dropped down into P6. He's lost about 10 seconds on that group he was battling with, though. And that actually did check those up a little bit. So now Crab is the third car in that pack as we get a replay here. Stevie leading this group down into turn 1, and just too much too much throttle and turning at the same time, and just loops the rear end of the car around. Tries to get it started back, and of course, at that point, the tires were just overheated, no grip, and so it took him a little bit to get the donuts worked out and get started back in the right direction.
He briefly tapped the wall there. I'm curious if he picked up any sort of bad damage. Of course, the iRacing damage model, it is very good. However, sometimes weird stuff can happen. Hopefully he didn't pick up any sort of suspension damage, which could have been the reason why he went for another loop after that first one, but not ideal for Stevie Ray. I feel like I may have to apologize to him after that, because I was mentioning how he was having a fantastic run, and sadly for him it all comes to naught as he's running down in P number 7, trying to hold off Sherman and battle with Joseph Tarantino right in front of him. You can see a little bit of damage on the front of Tarantino's race car, so hey, if you got the back of Tarantino's car and the front of Stevie Ray's car, you would have a pretty good looking Spec Racer Ford race car, even though I think the colors may clash on the two of them.
A little bit, yeah. I think you're absolutely right there. So yeah, he's got a little bit of damage. I wonder if he picked that up in the bus stop on the first lap. But in the meantime, back up front, Miles Crabb has jumped to the front of that group with Wozencroft and Russell. He's now up in P2, and we'll see if he can manage to pull away from that group. Like, he's already gained about a half second on them. So they're gonna have to work hard to just kind of stay in his draft and keep track of him and see if he can pull him up back up toward Kavanka.
That's Joaquin Effinger, who we saw coming down pit lane. I think he may have had a extracurricular escape off the circuit, which brought him down pit lane. We may be able to try to find a replay to see what exactly happened to him. We have a whole lot of replays to look at, and this is what happened to Effinger. He's heading his way into turn number 1. Oh, I think he may have had a technical issue. Slams into that wall. Must have had some sort of brake pedal failure for him as he slams into that tire barrier on the outside of the circuit. And this, I think, is what happened. Another angle of what happened to Stevie Ray, and oh, you can see the damage on Joaquin Effinger's car there. So right as Stevie Ray was heading into turn number 1 and having that spin, Joaquin Effinger's front left tire was all sorts of wobbly. I think I've seen cars on the streets of Philadelphia look very similar to Joaquin Effinger's car, so he's going for the Philadelphia style of automotive engineering. There's probably some fake state inspection stickers on there, and it probably isn't even insured by Joaquin Effinger. Not ideal for him to be running this race in P number 11. He is going to be running on Lonely Island between now and the end of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just kind of watching the lap times. Crabb is very quickly gaining back up on Kabanka. He actually was a 1 second faster last lap with about a 4.5 second gap. So, and he's got plenty of time. He just hit the 10-minute mark of the race, so halfway done. So he's got plenty of time to make up that gap. We may end up having a race for the win here before it's all said and done.
When Kyle Robertson is stopped down pit lane, not sure what happened to the driver who has not had a good race thus far. He piled in to that major drama at the very beginning. I think he's finally exiting the pits after being involved in that drama. He doesn't have a lap time on the board. He's crawling his way down the pit, so this is very strange. Hopefully he's not waiting on anybody. That would not be ideal. Stevie Ray has come into the pit, so I think he's had some sort of off. That's not good for him. We're following Christian Kabanka, and you can still see Kyle Robertson stopped right towards the exit of pit lane. Kabanka is still running smoothly, and actually last time by, Crabb had some sort of mistake as he's dropped off a little bit. The gap between those two had closed a lot. However, last time by, Miles Crabb set at 206.250 as Kyle Robertson. That was actually good sportsmanship from him, just to try to avoid being the pick in any sort of drama at the very north end of the field. Respectful stuff from Kyle Robertson to stay out of that drama, and I think he may also let this would be Mark Sherman. But actually, no, Mark Sherman has come down pit lane, so another driver coming into the pits. We usually see this in the Weekend Warrior Spec Racer Fords. We don't see it in the Spec Racer Fords from the Ray Esports Racing League. This is kind of odd that so many drivers are coming into the pits, and that's why that is not that's the air conditioning setting on these Spec Racer Fords, isn't it, Charles?
Yeah, absolutely. It's what I like to call the NASCAR modified setting, where you just lose the front body work. There's how we lost the front body work. Stevie Ray loses the car on the outside in the curbs, cuts all the way back across the track, and poor Mark, just a passenger, did not know what hit him as you see Stevie in the grass, and just comes across the track and nowhere for him to go. and that was that was bad. That was the toast is done. Both the fronts have popped off the car, jettisoned like they were rockets off of one of Elon Musk's latest creations there, and so both Stevie and Mark are back hitting the pits, getting their cars repaired, and they get back out on the track and finish off the race. Or Stevie actually said, "You know what? I'm done. I've had enough for tonight. I'm going to go and see if I can find a new H pattern shifter."
I think Stevie has made a terrible decision because he has left the session, and we have some battling between Miles Crab and Andrew Wosgroft. I think one of them hit the barrier coming out of turn number 11. That safer barrier is looming, and it is very, very ominous for these drivers. If you give a race car driver an inch, they're going to want to take a mile, and you can see that with their track limits coming out of turn number 1. I think we'll see these two start to battle heading into the inner loop. Before I finish up on that thought, I was going to mention before this battle starts to heat up, Crab and Wozencroft, some of the best drivers this series has to offer. They may be side by side coming into the inner loop in just a few moments' time. We have 7 minutes left on the clock, less than 7 minutes in fact, so we may see these two start to battle hard. Actually, no, they're taking a little bit easy heading through the inner loop this time by, so maybe trying to work together and build a bit of a gap between themselves and Scott Russell and P number 4 before they start banging elbows and banging bumpers between now and the checkered flag of this race. But getting back to the point that I was going to mention about Stevie Ray, I said that he made a terrible decision. That terrible decision was leaving the comparable chaos of the race that we've had so far here with the Spec Racer Fords to join the complete chaos here of the commentary booth. So I think we'll be able to drag in Stevie Ray to have a chat with him mid-race. Stevie, thank you for joining us here in the commentary booth. It's been a while since we've had a chat from the race admin himself. I don't think we'll talk about the races that you've had this evening, but just we'll bring you into the commentary booth. I think Josh is streaming the other broadcast right now, so you can be a third part of the commentary booth here. What do you think?
I'll do that, and I appreciate not bringing up the race. That was pretty poor, and my apologies to the guys that I affected.
I mean, we all have our moments, Stevie, so I can't judge. I am not a good driver, so I'm not going to pass any sort of judgment off to you. You did the best you could with a broken H-pattern shifter during that first lap of the race and a little bit of damage you picked up after that spin heading through turn number 1. But we have coming up to about 5 minutes left to go in this race, 14 minutes and 55 seconds left to go on the clock. We've got Kabanka leading it and Crab in P number 2, and the gap between himself and Wozencroft has actually increased a little bit. So coming into the final stages of this race, is there any drivers you're really keeping your eyes out for to try and make up some spots here?
Oh, you got to watch Miles Crab. He started towards the back, and he's come to the front, so he's always somebody to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's done a great job all season long. With the fact that he's won all the championships there was to win.
Yep.
So he's been a pretty nice breath of fresh air. And he's Stevie. I sell his picture in the SDK software. He's a local boy for me. So it's always good to have a local guy, running in the league.
There you go.
And so, Stevie, along with the runoffs that we have coming up in just 1 week's time at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course, we do have the Weekend Warriors runoffs coming up in about a week's and a half's time. There's still a little bit of scheduled discussion about what track may be held there for the Spec Racer Ford and Formula Ford runoffs in, as I said, about a week and a half's time. So, any news you want to break about the Weekend Warriors series and what this runoffs may look like?
No, I can't do that yet. It's still being discussed. And,
you have a non-disclosure agreement signed.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I think regardless of what kind of track y'all pick, it is going to be an intense race. Gives the people more of a reason to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell as well. We've got the runoffs as well coming up from the series that has your namesake, the Season 11 from the Ray Esports Racing League, the runoffs for the 2024 Spring Tour. That's going to be at Indianapolis. Personally, I think that's a very good choice. It was the host of the runoffs back in the later stages of the 2010s. That's a wonderful track as well, and one of the few from this season that I've actually visited in real life. So you want to talk the viewers through what kind of action we may expect at the runoffs in a week's time?
Oh yeah, you'll see more of what you've seen all season long. These guys are great. This week is a really good one with a prelim for the Watkins Glen Super Tour coming up next week, and then our Indy finale runoffs. It was held at Indy. What was it? 3 years ago coming up, I think, and I was fortunate enough to go there and meet a lot of the guys, so really looking forward to that.
I'm trying to fact check myself to see exactly when Indianapolis hosted the runoffs. It was a few years ago. It was in the not too distant past, and you may have run into one of my fellow Philly region members, that being the Aqualantes, who have been a staple of road racing here in the SCCA for quite some time. So talk a lot about the stuff going on with this racing league, but of course, as you just mentioned with the event, this event, of course, lining up with the Super Tour coming up at Watkins Glen. You want to talk the viewers through the connection between the Ray Esports Racing League and the stuff that happens in real life with the SCCA?
Yeah, with this league being tied up with the SCCA, not officially because they can't be directly involved, but they give them their blessing, so we run it in conjunction with them. And I always look at the schedule for SCCA for the coming season and try to line up our races accordingly, so anybody in real world can get some extra practice in our league with some door-to-door racing and some on-track scoping it out and getting ready for the following weekend in the real world. We try to do that as much as possible for these guys.
I think for one last question before we call the finish of this race, Charles, I'll let you ask Stevie some questions.
Well, I'm just, first I want to say thanks to Stevie because, from Apex, I really enjoy doing the broadcast. I'm happy to have picked up the Tuesday night broadcast as well as what I've done with Weekend Warriors. So it's just been fantastic. So I'll as long as they'll have me, I'll keep doing it. So yeah, I'm going to ask one question because it came up on the calendar and I noticed it, that I think this is maybe the first time or the first time in recent memory that the SCCA regionals will be at Barber this year in late August. So it'll be my first chance to go out and see the guys on track, and hopefully we'll have I know Miles said he would be out there as well. We'll be racing at Barber this year, and hopefully we'll get a couple others. I think there's a couple more guys, like maybe Skip Brock is local as well. So maybe we'll see a few more. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, when we'll take a couple of weeks off or so, but after the runoffs, and then kick it up again, and we will definitely try to put that in the schedule for our next season and have that on the Tuesday night before you guys hit Barber in real life. So that will be awesome for you guys to hook up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely going to start searching some guys out and see if I can get some handshakes made anyway. But Stevie, thanks. As always, we appreciate doing the broadcast for the league. We appreciate everything you do behind the scenes to make all this work. And obviously, of course, the drivers make it all possible. They're out here battling week in and week out, and it's just fantastic racing to watch.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Thanks, Ron. And you named it right there. It's those guys out there doing it every week that make this league what it is. I get the privilege of setting it up, but those guys are the ones who do it. And my thanks to them for supporting. We've got another sponsor lined up for next season already, so we're starting to do that. If anybody wants to come on board and sponsor some of these classes and help us out, just let me know. And once again, appreciate you guys, and I'll bow out and let you guys call the end.
The checkered flag has been at Stevie. Thank you for joining us. And Stevie, thank you for everything that you do for this series. It is definitely not unnoticed. Christian Gabanka has won it. Miles Crab ends up in P number 2. That's a very nice recovery. Ends up only 4 seconds back of Christian Gabanka, so a pretty good recovery drive after that incident. And Shamaza on lap number 1. Wozencroft in P number 3, and we're just waiting for a few more cars to take the checkered flag. But I think, Charles, you mentioned all the points I was going to mention to Stevie. Thank you. Ever since I picked up this series all the way back in, well, it was December when I started with the series full time, and the few broadcasts I did from these Tuesday night races back in October and November. Actually, it was September and October, trying to get my months correct of 2023. I absolutely adore this series. As a quick little spin for Josh Justice, heading his way around turn number 9 at the end of this race. But Stevie, these series that you put on, these races that you put on, are absolutely awesome. I love being a part of these Tuesday night broadcasts. I love being a part of the Sunday Weekend Warriors festivities as well. And I think as we're just seeing a few more cars take the checkered flag from the final Spec Racer Ford race of this season, I just want to say thank you again. It's a great job that you put on week in and week out. Some great racing as well. Your work is definitely not underappreciated, man.
Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate the kind words, and look forward to another season.
Likewise, I hope I am back for Season 12, and we're going to be back for the runoffs in 1 week's time. That is going to be absolutely amazing. Stevie, I'm sure we'll have a chat with you at the end of that runoffs broadcast in 1 week's time to kind of talk about what Season 12 and what the 2024 Summer Tour may look like, along with a little bit of discussion about the Weekend Warriors series as well. So, Stevie, we'll let you go after the night that you have. You may take some solace in some alcoholic beverages. I wouldn't really blame you. So, we'll let you go, Stevie. We'll let you enjoy the rest of your night, man. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody out there, for supporting the league as well.
Thank you, Stevie, as well. That was Stevie Ray joining us in the commentary booth. Always wonderful to have a chat with a man, the namesake of this series of wonderful racing action that we have week in and week out. And Charles, we have some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. Who do you like to have a chat with?
Well, we talked with Miles earlier. I want to get Andrew Wozencroft, who finished third in the race, in here because I have some very direct questions I want to ask him. So let's see if we can get Andrew. Andrew, congratulations on your P3. A couple of good battles there between you and Scott Russell and Stevie Ray for a while, Miles Crabb for a while. So give us a quick overview of how your race went.
Wow, that was a lot of fun. I'm going to say that this is exactly how my racing this weekend was. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but this was better. I finished this one.
Well, I actually watched the video, so I was going to ask you about your racing over the weekend. We talk about these SCCA guys. A lot of these guys are out here in the sim, but they're also out on the track in real life. And you had the opportunity to do some Spec Miata driving at Sonoma this past weekend. So obviously we saw a very nice shot of you in the air. Luckily everything was okay. You weren't hurt. But just talk about how the weekend went, because I'm curious about how the new track surface and how it all went for you.
No, thank you. I'm fine. I wear your Hans device, strap in well, have a good cage, and they're bulletproof. I gotta say, I did get a little bit airborne going through turn 1, but I can't say it went better than I could have hoped, in my opinion. I'm really blessed that no one else was hurt. The track is amazing. I got comfortable with the car. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do that many laps. There was just incidents after incidents, and it got me at the very end. But I got faster every lap, and definitely it's 2 seconds easily. There's so much grip out there. The weather was perfect. I can't wait to get back out there.
That's awesome. It's always good to because I always like talking when we get somebody will post a video or something in the Discord. Always hope that we get a chance to talk to them during or after a race, so we can talk about the on track exploits as well as stuff that we're doing in the sim. So congratulations on your P3. I'll let you give your thanks and everything. Then we'll let you go. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Definitely got to first shout it out always to Apex. Again, I can't say it enough. We enjoy watching the replays. For you, Josh, Charles, and Ron, thank you so much for doing what you do. To Stevie, don't worry about what happened in the Spec Miata race. Hey, trust me, this is reset land. I'm not having to pay anything out of my pocket for that one. Stevie, you do so much for us. For Miles, Christian, what a race! And I got to throw it out to my pit crew, my dad and my son, for wrenching with me and having a great time in ESI Motorsports, and everyone out there in Simland. We are good at what we do, and it really does help for us in the real world. And please give it a go if you're ever interested. And thank you for watching. And thanks, guys. Can't wait for runoffs next week.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.
That was Andrew Wozencroft. Always nice to have a quick little chat talking about the ins and outs of sim racing and the ins and outs of racing in real life as well. And for the second time tonight, we'll bring in Miles Crabb. And for the second time, Miles, we will congratulate you on winning yet another championship. It's 3 for 4 here from this season, pretty much as good as you can do. So, we'll talk about the championship later, but I kind of want to talk about how this race went for you. It wasn't as smooth as the Spec Miatas earlier on this evening, so talk us through that very wild ride you had tonight.
Yeah, that wild ride was a little bit of my own making. On the first lap, I didn't take a run on... So on the start, me and Christian kind of left exactly the same time, and Josh got a better start. So he got around us going into one, and I didn't really try to defend from him, run him off the track or anything. So we were kind of stacked up going up through the S's, and I was trying to figure out who was going to have momentum, and nobody had momentum. And I started to push Josh, and then the middle opened up. I stuck my nose in there, and I thought against it, and it kind of stacked up the people behind us. So they were backing out, so I backed out and gave Josh a little bit of room if he wanted to turn down, but he tried to send it around the outside for the lead, which I don't blame him. He had a good shot at it, and as soon as I realized where he was in that corner, I knew he was going to hit the bump and start to spin. I thought he was going to come across the track and spin. I didn't think it was going to be a lazy spin, so I kind of aimed to just ring around the outside, and right when I picked up the throttle to kind of shortcut the second half of the chicane of the bus stop, I saw his nose flick back to the right and disappear out of view, and I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. And did a quick 360, only lost like 5 seconds, but it hit me square in the wheel and like shortened up the track or something. So braking was interesting the first couple times I hit the brakes, and it had a decent push off up until the last 2 laps. Last 2 laps I was faster than Christian was catching him. I don't know if he backed off or fell off the backside of the tires or what, but there were a couple times I had the battle people coming through the field, and like I'm all for racing, and I'm not going to complain about people racing, but if I could have just had one more clean pass, I think I would have caught his draft. But oh well, I tried. I didn't quite pull off the Danny Sullivan, so.
Well, you certainly tried. You gave it everything you had, and I gotta say, the recovery drive with a damaged race car to claw up the lost time that you had to end up in P number 2, it was a very commendable effort from you. And commendable effort as all, if I can spit my words out here. It was 31 points you had over Justice heading into this final race, so a pretty dominant championship win from your perspective. So just talk us through this Spec Racer Ford season for you.
This one was a lot of just being smooth, always finishing. The FF championship was a championship by elimination, and Jake and Zach did better than I did. But I don't know what my worst race in the Spec Racer was, but I think it was like 5th, and I got stuck in a second pack and couldn't get away. So it's a lot of just being up at the front and finishing up in the front all season long. I did win a couple, I think. I don't remember. But as I said last week, I kind of show up every weekend to win. I don't really care about points. The best point stay is lead every lap, get the fastest lap, don't have an incident, and win the race. So I'm really looking forward to the runoffs. I like the runoffs. I like the idea of the runoffs. It's always so hard to be totally on your game for one race. It's a little bit easier when it's going to be a track like Indianapolis, where the draft will play a big part, but I'm so glad it's not Willow Springs. That was such a miserable, I had no speed.
I'll give you a little bit of solace here, Miles, coming into the runoffs, and that is the last driver from last season that won the championship in both the Mazdas and the Spec Racer Fords, that being Jamison Huffman, ended up sweeping the runoffs. So if you have the same sort of hopes heading into the Indianapolis runoffs in 1 week's time, I think you're definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with at that race. And Miles, just for one last time for the regular season before we head on off to the runoffs, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
So So I'm going to lead off with Stevie because I forgot to thank him the last interview. He puts all this on, has to deal with all this idiots, and yeah, puts a lot of effort into making this league great. And thank y'all for broadcasting. Hi Mom, hi Jessica, hi Steven, hey Ren. And I don't know who else is watching. Send it to the group chat, so maybe Robert's watching. I don't know. But it's been fun. Thank you for broadcasting it, like I said. And I might get a wild hair and do Formula V in the runoffs just to see if I could get 3 season championships in a runoff in the 4th class.
There you go.
Or I'll be terrible because it's a V and I never drive Vs and I won't know what I'm doing. But we'll see.
Well, those V races are usually incredibly entertaining, so I think even if you don't have a whole lot of pace in those Vs, you're going to have a lot of fun at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 1 week's time. So, Miles, congratulations on the championship in the SRFs, the Spec Miatas, and the Formula Fords. Gives you enough of an excuse to buy some champagne later on tonight. Congratulations, and we hope to see you at the runoffs in 1 week's time.
I plan to be here.
Alrighty, thank you, Miles, and that was Miles Crabb, our three-class champion from Season 11 of the Ray Esports Racing League. And we got the runoffs coming up in 1 week's time. We're going to have to talk a lot about that before we wrap things up. But I just want to mention one thing as well. Usually we like to thank usually we ask these drivers at the end of the interviews what they would like to thank, who they would like to shout out. We talk about the sponsors, obviously, on these broadcasts, because without them, these races and these broadcasts wouldn't be possible. But at the end of the season, I think we should talk about the sponsors and the people that really make this series what it is and make these broadcasts possible. We've talked about all the sponsors tonight, that being Personal Wealth Solutions here with the Spec Racer Fords, who hopefully appreciated my speed run of an ad read right before we grabbed the green flag here. Had the Grassroots Motorsports magazine sponsoring and their wonderful support of the Spec Miatas. They weren't running here tonight. They will be running next time out at the runoffs, that being the Formula Cars with SimMotion being the wonderful partner for the Formula 1600s, and TrailBreak.com being the sponsor over there, and a sponsor that's been with us ever since probably about 3 races into last season has been the Inside the SCCA podcast. Brian Belansky has been very generous of his support of this series, and you can check that out as a part of the RacingWire Podcast Network, and episodes of that show drop every single Friday, so you can listen to it on your way to the racetrack. Without those wonderful sponsors and the people that make this series possible, we wouldn't be here, and this great racing would not be possible. So before we talk about the runoffs and wrap things up, we just need to thank them for being amazing. If you ever buy anything from Grassroots Motorsports, TrailBreak.com, SimMotion, if you ever use the sponsors or come across the sponsors, thank them. Trust me, thank them. They will appreciate it. I used to race for quite a long time. I had sponsors and they made my career, which never really turned into too much of a career, they made it possible. I know how much sponsors mean in the world of racing. But Charles, we're heading into the runoffs in 1 week's time at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. It's another Roval from this season, but one that's a little unique and basically a Formula One track. So what do you think that race is going to be in a week's time?
Well, I wouldn't call it a Formula One track. Since it has been kind of redone by Tony Kanaan of IndyCar fame. So he had a real heavy hand in the design to make it an IndyCar track as opposed to an old F1 track. So there's a few changes in there, and I hope that Miles doesn't go back and watch any NASCAR broadcasts from that track, because they usually go about 5 or 6 wide into turn 1. It never ends well. But with the group of drivers we're going to have next week for this that are going to be running all these, the Formula V's are going to be absolutely fantastic there. They may actually go 5 or 6 wide into turn 1 and probably make it all work, just because they're that talented of drivers, and the cars are small enough that they can afford to get away with stuff like that. So it's going to be a great night of racing. Obviously a little bit longer broadcast for us, but that's fine. We enjoy it. For me personally, yes, absolutely. The sponsors are what make everything happen. And so thank you to all those companies for putting in the effort to help everybody out here. We do appreciate it as well. And I know the drivers are always out there trying to put on a good show to make you guys proud of them. And I know Stevie works really hard behind the scenes, even though he doesn't take a lot of the credit. He absolutely should, because he's the guy that's kind of the mastermind behind this, behind everything here. So, yeah, looking forward to next week and many weeks to come.
I hope that I'm back for season 12. I absolutely love this series. It is heart-pumping racing action week in and week out. There is a sense of community as well, and I absolutely love being a part of these broadcasts. And again, the runoffs coming up in 1 week's time. We'll go through what's on the menu there. So all three classes that we've had this season are going to be running. That broadcast is going to be on Tuesday, June the 4th at 8 p.m. Eastern. I think that would be 5 o'clock Pacific. Yes, it would be 5 o'clock Pacific. I'm trying to do the math in my head here real quick. And it's going to be the Spec Racer Fords to kick things off, followed by the Formula Cars, and rounding things off with the Spec Miatas well into 10 o'clock. So that's going to be the action that we have from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course from the 2024 Spring Runoffs and the Spring Tour Runoffs. Man, Charles, it has been an absolute pleasure having you alongside me in the commentary booth again this season. It's been a pleasure having our old buddy Josh Wilkie joining us in the virtual production hauler as well, working all the cameras and doing a wonderful job. He usually describes himself as being the drummer of a band. If he makes a small little mistake, people like to chastise him, but I think he does a damn good job. And I've been with him ever since he started here on Apex Racing TV. So Josh, do a fantastic job. Charles, again, thank you for joining me in the commentary booth. To the sponsors as well, thank you for your wonderful support of this series. To the drivers as well, and to Stevie Ray as well, thank you for making these races and these heart-pumping races possible. Really, these drivers, it's exciting week in and week out, and you absolutely love to see it. So for one last time, from the 2024 Spring Tour from the Ray Esports Racing League, that will do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bachel joining me in the commentary booth, Josh Wilkie doing a fantastic job in the virtual production hauler, our great sponsors of Personal Wealth Solutions, Sim Motion, Trailbreak.com, and the Grassroots Motorsports Magazine, along with the Inside of the SCCA podcast, and Stevie Ray as well for making this all possible. I say thank you all so much for watching, not just this broadcast, but the whole season as well, and we hope to see you in 1 week's time when we round things off with the Spring Tour runoffs at Indianapolis. See you all next week.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.